This is Module 2 and we will be talking about non-technology aspects of HADR. Throughout the module, we'll be covering topics and items that we DBAs and IT professionals don't even think about when embarking on high availability and disaster recovery solutions. Now let me start by telling you a story. When I was a kid, a friend of ours who happened to be a construction engineer used to take us on some of his projects. At a young age, I got introduced to the world of construction and the construction industry in general. I got to meet people working in that industry, the machineries that they use, the backhoes, the trucks, the tractors, the cranes. I got to talk to the engineers every once in a while. It's fascinating because you get to see how the transformation of the building goes right before your very eyes. So from a wide open space, an empty space, to laying down a foundation, to putting on the walls, until eventually you see a nice building after months and months of work. I kind of have this idea that the more people they put on the job, the more tools, the more machines that they use, the faster that they get the job done. And in most cases, it is correct that better tools translate to faster work getting done. And so the focus has always been on the tools. Now, understand that the construction industry goes beyond the use of tools and the machineries. In fact, there's more to it than tools. In a construction project, you need people who make things happen. The foreman, the engineer, they need to be responsible for getting what specific tasks need to be done for a specific section of that building. You need the people who have to sign the papers in order to get the project rolling. You also need to have the permits in order to get that job started. It doesn't really matter if you have the right people and the blueprints and the workers and the machineries. If you don't have a permit, you can't start the job. And of course, you have your blueprints. The architect starts laying out how the structure would look like, the different sections, maybe perspective view of how it will look like, finished product, and the different sections. And then the structural engineer would then come up with his own layout and blueprint that then gets handed down to the people who need to build it based on the blueprint. Now, high availability and disaster recovery is no different from the construction industry. In fact, there are a lot of similarities when we're looking at a high availability and disaster recovery project. Let's start with some definitions. I grabbed this definition off of Wikipedia for simplicity's sake. Take a moment and read the definition. If you look closely, there are three key things that are in this definition. First, the process. Every disaster recovery has to have a process. Then you have the policies. Together with the process, you have policies and procedures in place. Understand, though, that the definition, although it came from Wikipedia, did not have something like, we need to have 64 core server with 58 gigabytes of RAM and a ton of storage in order to get a disaster recovery. There's nothing in here that talks about anything technology or technical related. What we see in every disaster recovery project, if you walk into a room and people start talking about what the project that they're working on, what we see are a bunch of jargons, technical terms, translating into features for that specific platform. In this case, log shipping, clustering, database mirroring are all SQL Server features and technical aspects of the platform that we usually throw out there as DBAs and IT professionals. Why is that? Well, primarily because we've always focused on technology. The conversation always started by asking, what type of feature do we need to use? How do we use it? And sometimes it's frustrating because we've already talked about how we do it without asking the question why we need to do it. Throughout my career, I've created a framework which I call the PPT manifesto. This framework is what I use to outline different components that form a high availability and a disaster recovery project. Each letter represents a term. The first P stands for process. If you need to build a disaster recovery or a high availability solution for your e-commerce database server, what processes do we have in place in case something goes wrong or the server goes down or the hard drive crashes? We first need to define the process. Next, we need to define who will perform the process. We need to have the right people on the team. Make sure that they have the right skills to perform their jobs. And finally, technology. Now, these three key components, people, process, and technology, are what I feel needs to be part of any high availability and disaster recovery project.